Welcome, friends. My name is Ben Mack, and I'm excited to have you join us for this celebration of Peace Day, September 21st, 2015. Since 2001, September 21st of every year is what the United Nations calls the International Day of Peace, where every member state of the United Nations has agreed to wage peace. And to bring us to a peaceful start, we're excited to be joined from Roseville, California. Susan Wheat and her Susie's Cottage Childcare and Preschoolers have prepared a peace-loving song for our enjoyment. Susan Wheat, thank you so much for bringing your kids into our Peace Day program.
Oh, thank you for having us. Happy Peace Day. Can you say Happy Peace Day?
Happy Peace Day.
Would you guys like to sing a... Here we go. Turn it up more.
The world is a rainbow. There's many colors. Yellow, black, and white, and brown. Around. The world is a rainbow. Many different people. It takes all kinds of people to make the world go round. But you be you, and I'll be me. It's the way we were meant to be. But the world is a mixing cup. Just look what happens when you stir it up. The world is a rainbow. We work together. It's such a sight to see. The world is beautiful when we live in harmony. La 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 la. Now you be you and I'll be me. It's the way we're meant to be. But the world is a mixing cup. Just look what happens when you stir it up. The world is a rainbow. When we work together, we're such a sight to see. The world is beautiful when we live in harmony. Big turn up. La 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 la. So can we sing Happy Peace Day again, kids? Give a big wave.
Happy Peace Day, kids.
Happy Peace Day.
Thank you so much, Susan. Happy Peace Day.
Enjoy.
Beautiful. I'll do you as well. Thank you, kids.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow.
Wonderful. That was truly a joy, and thank you so much, Susan Wheat and the children of Susie's Cottage Childcare and Preschool. And presently we're going to jump up to Canada, where we have Aspie comic Michael McCreary with us for a candid discussion around peace and comedy, or perhaps inner peace and comedy. And Michael McCreary is best known for his video, Does This Make My Asperger's Look Big? And in the spirit of disclosure, I am also Aspergerian, and so this is a beautiful Aspie to Aspie heart-to-heart conversation. Michael, what is the role of comedy within your inner peace and life? How does comedy fit in with peace in your mind?
Well, you see, Ben, I think that we need levity in this world now more than ever, because levity is sort of what it initiates conversation. Like, humor is what I think gives people not only permission to laugh, but just an easy segue into heavy subject matter, where people can gauge something like ASD, autism spectrum disorder, and can openly admit and sort of laugh at themselves about it, about their own misconceptions about the diagnosis, and say, I don't necessarily understand it, but I would like to learn more, And through this open discussion where we can laugh and joke with each other, we can more easily educate people on the subject. Because I find that if you just give a constant stream of information, like a laundry list of content to people, they tune out because it's just technobabble, I find that if we give people something to latch onto, or something to segue into the heavy material with, in this case, humor, then it just makes it that much easier to swallow.
Beautiful. And your using comedy was something that somebody had suggested to you was going to be a valuable tool to stand up for yourself with Asperger's. Would you share with us why that was suggested, or the context about how you crafted your routine of "Does this make my Asperger's look big"?
Absolutely, Ben. Throughout my childhood, I was just I think it's just a given. Kids are weird. I love kids to death, and I still am one to some degree. I don't think you're an adult until you experience soul debilitating loss. But so I've had it pretty good, but I've never hit that coming of age. But throughout my childhood, I was already an eccentric. I spoke entirely in movie quotes, which were all context sensitive, mind you. My mom would say, "Who'd you hang out with today?" And I'd say all the usual suspects, like Casablanca. So I was just already kind of out there as a kid, and was always giving what I like to call an info dump to my folks about what happened each day. So they'd always advise me to write it down in my journal. And what started out as stories ended up being structured into jokes. And when I hit a low point in grades 7 and 8, when I'd been ostracized and alienated by my former friends, when we sort of hit a negative turn in our relationship, I sort of returned to that journaling and that joke writing and whatnot as a coping mechanism, because when you start to look at life in a third-person point of view, things are almost kind of funny. The worse it gets, it's almost kind of thematically perfect for what kind of story you're crafting, because if we're going to see our life flash before our eyes before we die, it might as well be something kind of interesting, and every story needs conflict. So what ultimately happened was that David Granier, the happy neurotic, God bless him, love that man, was doing a group called Stand Up for Mental Health outside of Guelph, Ontario. And my mom said that, I think I need this now more than ever. So I came on out to it. I took the course. He mentored me, taught me everything he knew about the medium, about the performance style and whatnot. And I was able to utilize that, harness that, and take my own life story, my trials and tribulations, and turn that into something that people could laugh at and then learn about. To use my own hardships as their escapism. It's a weird bait and switch, but that's what it kind of turned into. And honestly, comedy has been my peace of mind, because it's one of the only art forms really where you get instant gratification, or at least that's when you know you're doing a good job. The flip side is that it can be the most emotionally crushing thing, but in that, there's a lot to gain. I recently heard Ron James said that the difference between success and failure is that in failure you lose. In failure you learn something. So even that, there's something to take away from. So that's what gives me peace of mind there.
Thank you so much. One more question before we introduce Reverend Joe Bennett. Part of autism, wherever somebody might be on the autism spectrum disorder, there's the concept of stimming, something that helps somebody calm down. For me, I do things along these lines with a pen.
I was saying, you couldn't see it outside of frame. I do this weird marionette hand.
Is that in frame now? There we go.
No, there you go.
Cool. Would you share with folks what stimming is, and share with us, if you wouldn't mind, what kind of stimming you do yourself other than telling jokes?
All right. Well, self-stimulatory behavior, or as Ben just called it, stimming, is almost like a physical release for stress. It's like some people just have these. Some people have more subtle or socially acceptable things, like tapping your foot, like making your leg bounce around. But then there are other people who need to like scream or make noises or gesticulate. That's just what they do. And unfortunately, these are considered atypical. This goes against the norm and are usually perceived as threatening or alarming. But in actuality, this is what people on the spectrum use as a means to find peace. To find their own peace of mind. Because when things build up internally, you like to make your problem physical so you can sort of eradicate it. So like my brother he squawks like a parrot, he just makes these loud like rah noises, but he's like Burgess Meredith from Batman, but he loves it. Like that's what enables him to get that stress off his chest. And I showed you I do my weird hand thing, sometimes I just crack knuckles. I do it right next to my ear so I know that I've done it. It's weird. It's just little clarifications, but it's something you need to do. And hopefully in time this will be integrated into the range of acceptable human behavior, because I've been surrounded by this all my life, not just with me, but in a variety of different environments, like with Special Hockey International, Stand Up for Mental Health, et cetera, where people, it's just something you do. It's something that keeps you sane, And unfortunately, that creates a sort of stigma that makes people believe you to be insane, and that's very unfortunate, what we're trying to prevent.
Thank you so much, Michael. We'll be coming back around with questions and comments as we turn this into a broader conversation. Awesome. Presently, I'm excited to introduce Reverend Joe Bennett, who is going to be talking about his lifelong path and transitioning from a warrior into a Presbyterian minister. Reverend Joe, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Ben. For me, peace is a journey. And it's a journey towards awakening, or it has been. I grew up playing cowboys and Indians, cops and robbers, and war. Had the BB guns and all the toy guns and all of that. My dad had been in World War II, and all 5 of his brothers were World War II veterans. So I grew up hearing the war stories and watching war movies that were popular at the time. So when I got old enough, I decided I was going to go serve my country too. I had the idea that I didn't want to be sitting around on my porch in my rocking chair one day in retirement years and looking back and saying, wow, America's really been good to me. I've had a good life here. And the thought that I hadn't done anything for my country seemed like it would be haunting, so I decided to sign up, and I went and served 4 years in the U.S. Army. After I got out, a couple of years later, I was in seminary studying for the ministry, and we were in a discussion group outside of class one time, and somehow the topic came up that I had served in the military. Well, we had several international students on campus at the time, and 2 women in this particular group. One was from Italy and one was from the Netherlands. And they both questioned the fact that I was a Christian and yet I had served in the military. They saw that as a huge contradiction in terms, and I didn't. So I asked them to say more about that. And they mentioned growing up in these European countries where U.S. military bases were right in their backyards, U.S. nukes were right in their backyards, and how they were tired of that, and the European people were tired of that, our bases all over the world. And they talked about the teachings of Jesus and what he stood for and how he lived his life, and just said that, everything to do with war and the military was in direct contradiction with the life of Jesus and what he taught. And of course, I came back with some Old Testament passages about, David being a warrior and a man of war, and yet a man after God's own heart, and all of these things. But what they did in that session was they planted a seed in my mind, the garden of my mind, and I had to reconsider. Can one be a Christian and also be pro-military, therefore pro-war? in this life. And over the years, incrementally, my ideas begin to change, my viewpoint. I was exposed to a really good book. It's almost like a graphic novel. It's called Addicted to War: Why America Can't Kick Militarism. That was life-changing for me further along the way. Another movie, Why We Fight, DVD. Another one somebody got into my hands was called What I've Learned About U.S. Foreign Policy. So gradually over time, the way I say it's a journey, there have been steps and stages in this for me in completely changing my views. It wasn't too many years later I found out about Veterans for Peace and the work that they're doing, and finally, though sharing with them in their philosophy, I had not joined for many years, and recently went ahead and made that official and becoming more involved. Not too many years ago, and I'll end with this, I was on the square here in Burnsville with some people from the Presbyterian Church and also the Friends meeting in CeeLo, the Quaker community, and we were doing a peace march, and had a FedEx driver pull his truck up and jump out and got right up in my face, a young guy. He wanted to fight. I mean, he was about ready to throw down and have a fist fight, and he was challenging me and why I was there with this group of folks talking about peace. And I was able to let him know that I've served too, you know, and he had joined after 9/11 and gone in with very patriotic views, and he couldn't understand this whole pro-peace stance. He thought it was, you know, not supporting the troops. And in talking to him, I hope I planted some seeds the way these women in seminary had planted these seeds in my mind that led me on this journey further towards understanding the importance of peace for the future and sustainability of the planet and our future generations.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joe. From my perspective, sustainability is the key, and a notion that peace is profitable is an idea that needs to be spread in order to have sustainability out there. After we hear from Lauren Strand, we're going to invite folks that are here to comment or ask questions. The one thing that we ask is that we keep it in the spirit of Mother Teresa of being pro-peace, not anti-war. And so we'd welcome your involvement in this discussion. Presently, we're going to go out to Florida and hear from Lauren Strand in terms of how peace is an integral part of not just his daily life, his spiritual life, but also as an extension of his business life. He works on helping companies that are needing to bring in exterior labor, whether seasonal or because of various spikes, to experience peace and joy in the process of embracing more people to help them accomplish their business goals. Lauren Strand, thank you so much for producing this Google Hangout today and for all the work that you do to spread peace and joy. Thank you for the conversation of yours we're about to hear.
Thanks, Ben, and everyone, happy Peace Day. And I'm Lauren Strand, and it's a pleasure to speak with you from Florida's East Coast. And I have to admit, I smiled when I learned this year's theme was conversational. For the past 6 months, I've been blessed to build customer service teams for small to medium-sized businesses. I've brought together talented individuals from around the world to learn about many companies' cultures, products, services, and policies. Most importantly, we learned how leadership wants to treat their customers. It's a defining moment when intentional choices are made on how we serve fellow human beings. One email, one text message, chat message, post, or phone call at a time. This represented an opportunity to spread peace among people. It was really a plethora of one-to-one interactions right there on our computer screens. So perhaps you've recently interacted with a customer service person through a website. You had an issue, and after spending your hard-earned money, you wanted an answer. Chances are you wrote things to people through email that you'd never ever say face-to-face to a person. It's almost as if you're addressing an emotionless machine on the other end. No heartbeat, no feelings. So you feel justified perhaps being terse, sharp in tongue, or perhaps even demanding. You can get away using words you wouldn't dare speak in the workplace, at your child's school, or church. You're thinking, I have a problem and I want an answer. And I want the answer fast. After all, my time is precious. You probably think it's all about you, but it isn't. It's an interaction. It's a conversation. It's someone on the other end is going to help you, and your lives are going to be briefly intertwined to get something done. So as each member joined our customer service team, we trained on how to make peace an intentional act. It's an activity that will bring more than an answer at the end of the conversation. We are both, God willing, going to end up feeling joyful. So how did we do it? I borrowed an idea from Gary Chapman's book, The 5 Love Languages. We chose to sprinkle words of affirmation in our email replies. Our words were humble and genuine. We wrote to encourage and promote a sense of well-being. We want the recipient to feel at peace. So we drew upon the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And while it may sound odd to mention love and the other fruits in a customer service setting, that's what it takes. Why? Because every ticket, an agent has a moment of great choice. She or he gets to choose how to respond. Do I lash back in the same manner at the tone aimed at me, or shall I answer in a tone that promotes peace among people? So we dig deep within ourselves to a calm place to relax before reading the next ticket. We tell ourselves we can spread joy no matter what words appear on the screen. It's easy to say and really hard to do. So second, as we read a ticket, we read in a voice that's calm and kind. And while we've probably never ever heard your real voice, unless it was a phone call or a voicemail, we have no idea how you sound. Your words craft a tone in our heads. We can add an angry tone or a peaceful tone. So think about that for just a moment. What are the various voices you hear in your head when you read emails from your friends and coworkers? Third, we remind ourselves that the person on the other end has a heartbeat. She or he has value for simply existing. And at the heart of customer service is truly service. It's an opportunity to serve others by answering a question that's important to the requester. Along with freely giving of our knowledge, we liberally sprinkle words of affirmation. I wish you a wonderful day. I want you to prosper. I hope joy fills your life. Deep down, it's about wanting you to know that everything's going to be okay. And when you hit that all caps key and type every frustrated word in a virtual shout, I'm still going to tell you to have a wonderful day. Why? Because peace is an intentional act. Now, it gets downright hard for customer service people, and maybe you too. Why is that? Because there's a powerful psychic toll that happens over time. Internal narratives start to surface. How can I continue to be so positive when so many are negative? Thank yous are few and far between. And if we're seeking the deeper truth, it's a primordial thought of why not hurt others? Because after all, they hurt me first. Without removing the psychic toll, we lash out. So everyone, I ask you to shrug it off. In conversations, remember, peace is an intentional act. That means we have to do the work. When we make choices to truly stand for something, there's emotional effort that's absolutely required. There's no way around it. You either do the work or you don't. You touch so many people through your email and contacts every day. More than any point in human history, our world is conversational. And if each interaction contained one more sentence of joy-filled words of affirmation, how bright we would make the day for others. So I leave you with this heartfelt request. Do the work. Sprinkle words of joy in every conversation and spread peace. Thank you, and have a blessed day and a blessed life.
Thank you, Lauren Strand. Thank you, Joe Bennett. Thank you, Michael McCreary. And presently, and also thank you to Susan Wheat and all of the cuties that were at Susie's Cottage, Childcare, and Preschool. And presently, I want to open it up to the folks that are here in Burnsville to see if there are comments or questions. Either way, perhaps we can start with questions and then go questions for these folks and then take comments around what you imagine it will take to spread peace on earth. And so, does anybody here have a question for any of the speakers that we've heard so far? Looks like almost a hand.
Oh, hi, Ben.
Hi there, Ramona.
Now I know you for absolute certainty.
Excellent.
We've met before. Anyway, I had the wonderful pleasure. I've been living in India for 3 years of meeting Mother Teresa. She came to our embassy. I was in the foreign service working at American embassies around the world. And she's really a tough lady. She's very tough. And I noticed Pastor Bennett has, I still call him pastor and I shouldn't. He's a chaplain, and which is so far above even being a minister in my book. So, but he has a great big picture for the exact same picture that my Indian family who lives in Connecticut, they have her on display in that exact picture. And I may be stoned to death, but I would be so happy if even Burnsville offered to take in a bunch of these refugees fleeing. It's so sad to see the little tot wash up, slipping out of his father's arms and just being drowned. And I think we need diversity here. I know we have a lot of diversity, but I feel that we really, and I'm used to a lot of diversity, all different languages. And I think that it would benefit the community. I really do. And I'd also, like I discussed, I'd love to see the high school create a hospice year, just like Rochester, New York. And I know Joe could teach that very well. And I'll give him the big article that I read on it. Because it starts the seniors in high school out on the right path. And that's what they need. They really do. And I'm still a Girl Scout in heart. Worked with scouting most of my life. So.
Thank you.
Okay. Let somebody else have their turn.
While folks are thinking of what they might want to share or what they might want to ask, one of the things that I had asked for Michael and Joe and Lauren to do was to listen to the other speakers and to comment on what the other speakers had said that resonated most with them. I don't know what it takes to co-create peace. I know that it takes us all. I know that of what Ramona just said, that when we think of biology, over-specialization leads to extinction. It's the diversity of life that allows for robustness and survivability and sustainability. But in terms of Joe and Michael and Lauren, I think I'm going to go in the same order that we started with and ask Michael first and then Joe and then Lauren what they had heard in each other's talks that they imagine will be most fertile in terms of co-creating peace on earth. Michael, again, I put you on the spot to go first. What was it that you've heard within these conversations that you imagine is most fertile in cultivating peace on earth?
What I think was really interesting was there was a motif here today, which was to be expected, but it was when the Reverend Bennett was talking about the interaction with the FedEx worker who used to be a veteran, and then what Lauren was talking about just with customer relations and not thinking about people like machines, even though we're talking through machines to get to them. Consider the beating heart that exists on the other end. I like that what we were discussing here was absolute empathy. We are with people. We are with like millions, billions of people enter our lives for but 1 second, like just a couple moments at a time, and then we never see them again, usually. And you just have only so little time to make an impression, so why not it be a positive one? Why not it be a beneficial one? You know, we have so much power. People like to think of themselves as small, insect-sized being in this universe, but I think we actually do have so much capabilities. We have the ability to hurt and the ability to nurture in a moment, in less than a second. And I think that it's great that what you're both teaching here is to approach someone, to completely disregard someone's personal history or even where they're going. You're living in that present time. So make the best of that for either person, yourself and them. And I think that's great that you're both teaching that. That's all I got to say about that.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Michael. And now I'm going to go to Joe.
And Michael's point about the need for levity and comedy, certainly in the world, on a day-to-day basis, in our interactions with people. And as Lauren stressed, the conversational bit here, you know, that's how we interact with people. We share our stories with one another. We hear their stories. It may be just a few minutes with the clerk as we're checking out of the grocery store or whatever. I have found it very valuable to be in the spirit of giving people the time of day, listen to them, engage with folks. And so I love the whole idea of levity and comedy as such a necessary place in life for us to have that, and then the whole conversational bit. That's how we're going to keep peace together. And I would throw music into that too.
When you throw music into it, in what way, what's the role of music? I certainly am not disagreeing, and I've certainly heard that different peace organizations around the world have said that music is a binding element. And many people say music is the way that people of different languages can co-create harmony without needing to understand the verbal of each other. And I don't mean to be putting words in your mouth, I'm just speculating, and I have trouble closing my lips.
Well, you know, we've all seen the posters or bumper stickers about make art, not war. You know, and I think there's something about that shared collective creativity that we all. I don't know of any culture or of any person that does not enjoy music, and so I think music is something that we can share and learn to you know, expand our horizons in other forms of art as well, and share that. I mean, that's the power of culture, I think, and music is part, you know, one of the products that the power of art to heal and soothe brokenness and hurt and pain in the world. And if we can learn to respect each other's music and just enjoy it, I think that can go a long way towards peace between people.
Thank you. Lauren, your comments and reflections on our peace conversation so far?
Sure. What struck me was Pastor Bennett had talked about really seeds planted in his mind, and these are seeds not necessarily initially of peace, but he listened. And as a younger man, and even as a middle-aged man, it took me a long time to listen to others, because I listened to my own self speak too much. I realized that the harmony and the wisdom was being overshadowed by my own arrogance. And I reflect in the changes of seeds have been planted in my mind about peace, about love, about joy, a wide range of things, and seeing it as a strength to be able to not only reflect but then outwardly change. So the man I am today, I wish I could go back and a comedy, sort of like Michael had said, go back and tragically say, hey, selfish man of earlier, listen to these things. And Ben, you planted a very interesting one about a year ago that bloomed, and that's removing words of conflict from my vocabulary. Again, in a very humble way, but not talking about targeting customers and bullet points and taking aim at something. What are other intentional, peace-filled words that I can say? So the planting of seeds and listening is a powerful way where I remind myself that's how peace will spread. I will be at more peace. I will listen to others and absorb what they're saying in a genuine way without just being ready with that filter to jump back and say, this is my position, right? It's listening, and it's that intentionality of taking a moment. Because the other thing I appreciate and recognize, it's that moment of connectedness. It's that moment of joy, of levity perhaps, of seriousness, that really gives a spice of life that in this season of my life, I sit back and say, it feels so much better. And I'm a part of that. So it's that listening moment is really what struck me, combined with that intentionality of not just expecting peace, but being part of planting seeds in others' minds and helping them bloom. And sometimes it's just joining up with those that already have blossomed and that I can become part of to help promote peace, because it feels very joyous.
Okay. Thank you, Lauren. And I want to open it back up to our folks here in Burnsville for questions for them or comments to yourself on what you imagine it takes to co-create peace. Fantastic.
I agree with what's been said, that all of the arts and humor and all of the things that are doorways to more peace, and realized quite a long time ago that the greatest contribution that I, myself as a person, can make to peace is being the most peaceful I can be inside of myself. It's very important to me to get the root causes of conflict, and one that manifests every day in my life as a woman is the inequality. And while we have made strides, I am noticing things like we don't have a woman in a leadership role here today in the conversation. I notice the comments that are made to little girls about their looks instead of their intelligence. I'm 63, so when I was a young woman, the job opportunities were even much less than they are now for women. So when I went into the counselor the one time I saw her, you could be a nurse or a secretary, very limited what I was even told I might aspire to. I don't know that we'll have peace until the feminine is equal to the masculine, internally and externally in the world. And I also will say, for me, part of becoming a peaceful person is recognizing there are times when being a warrior is part of contributing to peace. I have participated in civil disobedience at the State House for equality of race, gender, education, access to education. So that's very important to me, and it's something that I think about when we're still trying to have women in roles of leadership, whether it's in Washington or in our churches. That women aren't allowed to still hold certain leadership positions in religious institutions. Also, gender equality. So these issues are important to me, and I do think about them a lot, and I think we can't afford some messiness on the road to peace. And I do appreciate humor. I'm also a musician, and so I just wanted to say that I think that we really have to notice how we interact with different, whether you're masculine or feminine, and the opportunities that are available here worldwide. You know, and I love the efforts like Women Hold Up Half the Sky and some of the efforts that are happening worldwide, and Smart Girls, Amy Poehler's thing that we see on telling the history of women, because I'm still trying to find the history of the women in my own family, because in any genealogy the stories of the men were recorded. So we mentioned storytelling, so I'm very intentional about telling the stories. I respect the men in my family and my life and want their stories told, but I'm very intentional about telling the stories of my mother and my grandmothers.
Thank you. Others?
I would like to say something.
Please.
I think a lot of people don't realize how much of a difference you can make in somebody's life by just smiling, saying hello, asking them if they need any help or something like that. I want to tell you just a little story, and I hope it doesn't get too long. I used to own an ice cream store here in town. So this young lady would come in, and her mother would come with her at first, and I realized that she had some challenges. And then her mother got to know us, and we got to know her a little bit. I didn't really know what her challenges were, but she would come in twice a week, and her mother would leave her at the store, and we'd have ice cream together and we'd talk. And she loved to come to the store more than I ever knew. And then at one time she said, I make these little chocolates, can I bring them and sell them? They were chocolate lollipops. So she did. And time went on, and she would come every week. Well, we finally closed our store. And one day I was in the grocery store, and the girl's mother came up to me and she said, I just want to thank you because you made such a difference in her life. And I said, well, how is she? How's she doing? She said, oh, she died. She said, but she talked about you all the time. I had no idea. I was just being me. But it made such a difference in this young girl's life. That's my story.
Thank you.
I'd like to share, I think pretty much to piggyback on what everybody else has said, I think for me peace is the other's mind, and I'm a clergy myself, and also I'm a dual career. I work in the state government, and I find myself often saying, how are you all doing? You know, as a minister, and it's part of my DNA is to ask, how are y'all doing? But I find it sort of disturbing sometimes. You never get it back. And I'm, you know, even in the store, wherever, like when I'm working on a state job, you're trying to ask how they're doing, but quite, and I'm sure you all observe this too. And sometimes we're guilty of not returning that concern. But I think to be others-minded, and I try to be conscientious when somebody's saying, "How are you doing?" I want to make sure that I take the time instead of giving them all my burdens and my heartaches to say, wait a minute, how are you doing? And if you notice, a lot of times people are so caught up into their own burdens that they're quick to tell us their concerns, but they're ready to shut you off. And I think being others-minded is a great avenue for peace. And I love St. Francis' prayer that I'm sure we all are familiar with. And I think he teaches us this about being others-minded. He says, "Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. And where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. It is in dying that we are born again to eternal life." And I think that what I'm hearing from everyone else, I think peace comes when we're others-minded, when we sort of get out of ourselves and just sort of focus in on others and just take that moment to show concern for others and doing for others. I found even in my own, sometime when I have felt bad physically, I'll go visit somebody, an elderly person that's in a nursing home or something, and I feel better. So it returns, that healing returns to me. So I think peace comes when, if I'm mad at my wife or upset with her, when I get out of myself and say, maybe she's having a bad day, I feel better. So it's amazing how this prayer, and I think when you get others minded, I think peace just comes all around when we get out of our own comfort zone and just get others minded. I think it's a win-win for everybody. So that's my experience. And I thank you, and I've enjoyed myself here today.
Very good. Thank you. Love the others minded. Love what I'm hearing. Love that notion about the little moments. Other comments?
Well, I have to agree with this concept of being a good listener. And most people are not. And we do get hung up inside of ourselves. But I keep hearing, as clear as bell, my mother's voice. And she always said this in her prayer at dinner: be ever mindful to the needs of others. And she lived that way, and she set beautiful examples. And in the world we live in, that's very difficult to do because people are somewhere else, they're so busy. I don't like technology. I think computers they have their good moments, but I kind of connect to that as that's where part of the problem started, really. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. There's just so many people in the world. It's so vast, but really just to try to stay centered and be a good listener and be ever mindful to the needs of others is a beautiful thing. It's quite simple. It always is quite simple.
Thank you.
There's a provocative question that I've been thinking about asking the group, so I'm going to ask it. Because I think part of what we're saying also, though, is that peace isn't always this perfectly paved, smooth road. And Michael McCreary, there's a joke I've stolen, I don't know from whom. But when I've told this joke in Los Angeles, and when I've told this joke in Asheville, it's gotten laughs. And yet, when I tell this joke here in Burnsville, I have yet to get a laugh. So I'm setting it up in a bad way. Right. I want you to imagine that it's sunny out and that we're outside. And here's the joke. On a beautiful day like today, and can you believe some people have the nerve to complain about inequality? And in Asheville, that got laughs. And when I was doing magic at a couple restaurants when I first moved here, and I told that joke, it was blank faces and folks going, I don't know how that might be funny. And I don't know exactly why I bring it up here, but part of what you were talking about earlier as inequality, to me, inequality unexpressed is a background tension. And to me, peace is bigger than the lack of violence. And I'm not sure where I'm going with this. I know that as an artist, my goal in relational aesthetics is not to be center stage, and yet right now I'm breaking the tropes of the form of art that I seek to do, which has me remove myself as much as possible. And yet I'm putting myself in the center here to bring up a point that was brought to the fore by some of these parts. And I think that I've been astounded by how divisive promoting peace can be. And I'm not quite sure how to bring people into conversation. I'm not quite sure what to do next year on Peace Day. I'm not quite sure that I want to focus on Peace Day. And yet I don't know how to live a life that feels meaningful without keeping the hope that we might have peace on earth.
Just keep that same attitude you have, please.
I can't imagine giving it up. I know that I had an ego validation the first year I worked on Peace Day, working with a marketer that Lauren and I have worked with, Warren Whitlock, and we came up with an idea to help popularize. We got hashtag Peace Day to trend for the first time because we saw all the different splintered peace groups. There was Peace One Day and Peace Hugs and Peace blankety blank, and we said, you keep promoting that hashtag that you're doing, but nobody owns hashtag Peace Day. Can you do what you're doing and simply add hashtag Peace Day, which no one owned? And for the first time on September 21st, 2013, hashtag Peace Day trended. And my ego went, yay, that's part of a team that came up with something that worked, and the marketer and me. And that was cool. But each year, this is my third year, it's astounding how many people want to say, yes, I'm pro-peace, and then, I don't know. And the number one ingredient that people keep saying is that there's not money in it. And yet, to me, peace is the sustainable element. It's co-creating and constructing something together. That the short-term gains of breaking something up and going in and fixing it isn't the sustainability of culture. So I'm really open to suggestions, and we've got less than 8 minutes left about what we might do next year, or how can we make this conversation. Popularizing hashtag Peace Day ain't enough. Getting hashtag Peace Day to trend on September 21st doesn't make the leader of our United States go, we've agreed to wage peace on September 21st. Our leader of these United States, none of our leaders since 2001 has recognized the International Day of Peace. Less than 20% of the heads of state of member states of the United Nations recognize the International Day of Peace.
I like the idea that you mentioned about your second novel that you're working on, that you go to a date of 2027 where peace has already been achieved, and then you reverse engineer back to how we got there. I think there's some real validity to that.
This was an idea I learned at Arizona State University. There's a term of art called affective. You take a positive future and reverse engineer it. And so we were playing with the idea, me and a gentleman named Juan David Guerrero, now goes by David Guerrero in Phoenix, we're playing with the idea of, we've accomplished peace by 2020. How did we do it? Or it could be 2027. And I've liked the idea of 2020, of having 2020 vision, because people talk about 2020 vision, and some people talk about it as perfect vision, but it's actually the average vision. So I do love the notion of by 2020 we actually celebrate Peace Day. And that fictive term, thank you, it's tough because casually on the phone I call him Joe, and yet on a stage I feel that other than calling you Reverend Bennett is, and it's all good. That's internal lack of peace, and I'm rambling again, and I thank you for that input. Other ideas, Lauren, Michael, folks here? I'm going to step to the side so I don't keep talking. Michael McCreary knows what it's like to not be able to stop one's mouth from moving when given the microphone.
I just want to make a comment. In 12-step programs, they talk about the greater than, lesser than, and how how that creates dis-ease among people. I think we need to be intentional about inviting people to the table. We've all talked about how all of us want to be seen. We want our stories to be heard. And so often in our community here, I go to meetings where the people whose, their problems we're attempting to address aren't invited to the table. And it creates that greater than, lesser things, and then people will say, well, they won't come. They won't come to the meeting, but it gets into that thing of being invited by someone you trust and know that you're not going to be put on the spot, or it might just mean beginning by gathering somebody's story so that it can be presented. But it's like talking about education when you don't listen to children, or talking about domestic violence without talking to people who are in the midst of domestic violence. So it's very important to me in all gatherings that we're intentional about inviting people to the table and not just taking it for granted that that they'll show up.
When we talked about customer service, making it intentional as well, I like that terminology because we have to think about it and we have to remind ourselves. The other thing we have to do is we need to remind one another, because as you're sitting down and working through some challenging issues with customers, you tend to share stories that can degrade into the tales of woe and how could he or how could she. And what we need to do is keep stopping ourselves and saying, wait a minute, it's really that moment that if we take that moment to speak kindly, to smile we talked about, to let our light shine, that inner light that's in us and bigger than us, you get people to think. And it's going to take a while. Ben, I know it's a next year, but it's going to, let's reverse engineer. I hope it's not that far, but the idea is people, when they encounter that, it usually they say, wait a minute. It makes them think, what is it different about what I just encountered or did? And I'm ready to talk about an inner light. I'm ready to talk about peace. I'm ready to talk about being intentional and loving and feeling joyful, and even if it's a tough day, to acknowledge the joy in the universe. And it's going to probably be a string of those conversations time and time again on a little larger stage. We're going to have to do the work, as I said, step outside, because we can share stories in safe spaces. We're going to have to do it in less safe spaces so that people start to say, we're very serious about peace, and feel what it's like when you encounter people promoting peace. So that would be a little bit about, I don't have a theme wrapped around it that sounds great. I leave that to you and to others that are more gifted. But I like what was just said about the intentionality, about the smiling, about the moments of levity and happiness, because that light makes people go, what's different? And they need to experience it for them to have that seed in their mind to go, wait a minute, maybe I'm going to change a little bit of who I am.
I have a theme.
Beautiful.
I think we should have a party for peace.
A peace party.
As smoke the peace pipe.
As we're wrapping things up, Michael McCreary, do you have a concluding thought for us?
Well, I'm a talker, not so much a doer. You might have gathered that, but I'm very much on board for the idea of, and I know it sounds it sounds like an oxymoron, but peace going into more dangerous territory. Like, I think that peace if this cause wants to get something done, then it needs to be willing to immerse itself and to see the darker side of human nature, because you can't change what you don't fully understand or aren't fully surrounded by. And I'm very much down for with that philosophy of just being able to crawl as low as we can. Like, once we can see the worst of the problem, then dig even deeper. Like, just keep looking until we sort of have a fully rounded idea of what we're up against and what needs to be rehabilitated. Because that's what we're talking about here, is it's not so much the idea of completely eradicating and destroying something. It's learning how to nurture something back to health that's been broken for a very long time.
Beautiful. Nurturing something back to health, nurturing peace back to health. Before we sign off, I want to thank Wendy Reed for allowing us the use of the design gallery, and for the folks that are here presently with us sharing in this conversation, for the folks that are watching the replay at home, for Michael McCreary, Aspie Comic, for Lauren Strand, for the students at Susan's. As long as I've known Susan Weed, I still have to look at Susie's Cottage, Childcare, and Preschool. For Reverend Joe Bennett for being here. And before we sign off, I want to share this flute that Alan Jones made for me in the style of the Hawaiian flute. This is a Hawaiian nose flute, and the notion is this was made for me, and I'm only the one allowed to use the nose flute here. But it's The notion in the Hawaiian culture is that this sends love into the air. And the one thing that I've heard, whether it be a face of compassion or empathy or listening, it appears to me that love is the answer. And so here's the nose flute. And I am not a skilled musician. It's kind of anticlimactic with all the content that we've had here. It takes a little bit of leap of faith that this is love, that this is the sound of love. They say that by playing this, that I will attract my true love. I'm a little nervous of what true love I'm attracting, but I'm willing to have faith and to believe that love is the answer, and whether it be this flute or whatever love it is that we have to share, the love of comedy, the love of helping others in business, the love of a spiritual path, that in order to co-create peace on earth, that love is the answer. Thank you all for sharing this part of Peace Day with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I've saved my husband's, he has the whole set of those. He loved that, even starting from the old tonette that we used to play. And since I'm the most, always the advanced, oldest person,